So my coworker recently said, my career has looked like what happens when you blow on a dandelion. And that really spoke to my soul and inspired me to show you my resume in dandelion seeds. I've worked a lot of different places, and when I look at this timeline, I get really excited about all the opportunities I've had and all of the different places that I've gotten to work with, all of the amazing people I've gotten to collaborate with, all of the photo booths I've designed for AIGA. But outside of that was another story going on that I brought to work with me every single day. In 1962, my grandpa Jack passed away. In 1980, my Aunt Gail passed away. In 1991, my grandma Essie passed away. In 2005, my Uncle Jack passed away. In 2008, my dad's best friend, who we called Uncle Warren, passed away. In 2008, my grandma Cece passed away. In 2011, my Aunt Jean passed away. In 2011, my dad passed away. In 2011, my grandpa Monty passed away. In 2011, my godfather Charles passed away. In 2013, my Uncle Rich passed away. And in 2017, my Aunt Lily Mae passed away. Grief is very complicated. I held a lot of tensions of denial, anger, depression, bargaining, acceptance consecutively for a really long time. When I look at my resume, I also see that when I worked at Vetazelo, I was traveling 3 times a year to clean my dad's house in Charlotte. And when I worked at Media Loft, I was in the process of sorting through all of his things that I brought back with me. I often felt lost in a sea of platitudes. Somebody recently sent me a grief blog and taught me this word. So if anybody has ever hurt you with a platitude, may you find peace in this very sarcastic definition. A platitude is a remark or statement, especially one with a moral content, that has been used too often to be interesting or thoughtful. So you're probably all thinking everything happens for a reason. Everything doesn't happen for a reason, some things just suck. However, good things can come from bad things. I am originally from Charlotte, North Carolina, and my parents divorced when I was 4. I moved a couple hours away from the ocean to Eau Claire, Wisconsin in 1991. And if anybody knows the winter in 1991, yes, it was that winter, the Halloween blizzard. And I was like, what is this? The winter wasn't the only challenge. We also left a community where people looked like us and joined one where people did not. There are people of color in Eau Claire, but my classroom settings, it was usually just me as the only black woman. My sister and I were kids, so we didn't really know at the time what that meant. We just kind of rolled in like, big hair, don't care. What's up, Wisconsin? You got black girls now, deal with it. And we managed to maintain healthy relationships with both of our parents. As a child of divorce, I often say I had the best case scenario. My parents never badmouthed each other. They allowed me to have my own relationship with them and decide how I felt about my situation. I grew up around a loving family, my mom's side, but there is part of me, that little girl, who always wondered what it would be like if I would have stayed. If I could talk to her, I would tell her that even though it would be for a really sad reason, that in my 20s, I would get to know my dad's side of the family. I would travel to Charlotte to clean his house, and because I was down there, they would invite me over. I would end up flying to Durham for my cousin Mallory's wedding and designing all of her paper collateral because it's me, and they came up for mine. I would tell that little girl that my niece would someday know them too, and that we would visit my dad's church in Charlotte, and that all of his friends would become my friends. His friends would become my family. My dad sang in a gospel choir. That's my dad. So every time I go to the church down there, everyone's like, Doug Stovall's daughter's here. His friends come up for our weddings. I found the most healing in being able to go through my dad's things. He knew he was going to die, and he told me what he wanted me to have all the time. The Foot Locker was really important. Like, make sure you get the Foot Locker. I've built a little Instagram archive, Reggie's Things, where I've logged since 2011 the process of going through his things and sorting through them, getting rid of some, photographing others, and having them become my decor. Making wind chimes out of his scrap metal with my friend Jim, who's a welder. And I just recently started doing a photo restoration. Some of the images, like this one of my grandma Essie, are torn and worn apart. I was worried that they were going to get ruined, so I started scanning them in to Photoshop out the wrinkles and out the curves and the tears. And as I do this, I can feel my own restoration happening. I start to wonder what the colors in the photo would have looked like, and I start to play with thinking of what the room, putting myself into a space that I so desperately wish I could enter. I could spend this entire 20 minutes. How long do I have? I could spend this entire time just telling you stories about people like my grandmothers who couldn't be more different but instilled the same values in their family. Or my Uncle Rich, who taught me how to pray over every meal, even at restaurants where people stare and judge you. Or my Grandpa Monty, who said life will still be good, it will just be different, when our grandma passed away. And to this day, I still tell that to anybody who I love who's lost another loved one. Kino Evolve recently taught me this quote: the only way to project project. The only way to protect joy is to practice it. And inspired me to think about how I protect my joy in no particular order. I'm always really humbled at thinking about the things that cause us anxiety and human suffering and stress are technology. And when you think about what you need to heal from that, it's the basic things that our ancestors have always had. Art, music, food, rest. I was so excited to say this in front of a room of creative professionals because you know what I mean when I say that what looks like work to other people is self-care for us. Like we need to be sitting on a floor, drawing on our sketchbook for hours and hours, and we need to screen print, and we need to make wind chimes out of metal. Kate Fingbird once said, "What we love will save us." It's in those moments, as I look back through the years of everything that I've designed, that I can also remember what I was going through and how those projects healed me. Things I've learned from grieving, in no particular order. I say this a lot, I draw this a lot, I journal this a lot. Life is short, life is long. I think they're both true. I think life is short can mean have good intentions, but oftentimes it becomes stressful when you think you have to do everything and say yes to everything and take every opportunity. I've learned more healing from the concept of life is long. Even though the people who passed away left before I was ready for them to leave, they were still here for a really long time. I have a lot of ideas, and I give myself space and permission to not execute all of them right this minute. Some of them won't happen for 5 years, some of them won't happen for 10 years, and that's fine. You have to do that because if you don't leave space for things that are life-giving, it defeats the purpose of doing what you love for a living. That's why I started November, and I think it's amazing that I got November for Creative Mornings. I did this 2 years ago. I designed the word no over and over, and it was my way of promising myself that I would say no to things. And I'm bad at it, so I made buttons that I would actually hand out. And Creative Mornings made them today, so on your way out, you can all get one. I've also learned that it takes more wind to shake this tree. You get endurance from suffering, and you get patience. The things that used to worry you and stress you out just don't anymore. It's also part of the reason that I'm comfortable in uncomfortable situations and having hard, difficult conversations. I think it's important to speak your mind. Do your best to make people feel convicted, not ashamed. And if you don't get it right, say you're sorry. I've also learned everybody should go to therapy. Like literally everybody. I've learned to not speak in platitudes because I know what I liked out of the people that really showed up for me. And I do that for the people who are surrounding me going through suffering. It can be as simple as asking somebody 5 years after they lost their mom how their mom, or about their mom. Like, people know how to show up for you after a funeral, but years later, when you're still grieving, it's just really nice to have somebody to tell stories to. We're supposed to rejoice with those who rejoice and mourn with those who mourn. I think there's reasons that we don't. If we share too much personal information about ourselves, we get accused of looking for attention or external validation. But the reality is, if we keep things private, we get accused of being disingenuous on social media, making our lives look too perfect. People will talk about you regardless, so just do what you want to do. Everybody grieves differently. Literally no one is wrong. And the most important thing that I've learned is good things can come from bad things. So I got one more song from my dad's choir, and I'm coming to you. I'm gonna have everybody get up.
Yes, love it. We do have a few minutes for some Q&A if you want to ask Mel a question. We have some mics up here in the aisles. You can just make a line or come on up and say hi, tell us your name, and ask away.
Real quick, I just want to thank Ryan Stapera. He made all the videos.
First of all, thank you so much for sharing such a wonderful presentation. Grief is something that's been on my mind a lot lately, as I'm someone who hasn't experienced a lot of it, but it feels very foreboding. At a stage where parents are getting older, it feels like there's kind of this oncoming onslaught of grief, and it doesn't seem like something that I'm even remotely aware of how to prepare for. I really like the fact that you used the quote that there are thousands of ways to grieve and no one is wrong. Like, that really resonated with me. Mm-hmm. Have you yourself ever been in a time of grief but not recognized it? You know, you spoke of denial. Mm-hmm. And how did you end up recognizing it? Like, what was that revelation to you?
Ooh. This is going to be a hard Q&A. Do I have to tell you? There's a lot of people here.
You can say
so what the denial stage is what it sounds like. You know, you're in shock and you do a lot of avoidance. And I definitely, my coping mechanism was always to be really busy and just distract myself. And I actually learned through my grief counselor that is, I chose healthy things to distract myself with, so I can't beat myself up too much. But I think, you know, even if you can't like mentally know that you're going through something, your body tells you. My body told me, and I was forced into self-care because I didn't have another option.
Thank you. And then for anyone, I don't know, is there any way to prepare for grief at all? Is there any way to brace yourself for the inevitable that is to come?
I don't think so. I think you can be, I mean, I knew a lot of the people were going to pass away, but even when you have time to prepare, it still feels sudden when you lose somebody, so.
Hi, I'm Owen. This is my first time here.
Hi, Owen.
Thank you. So on a different note, I have a question about your creative processes. Processes, is that it?
Process.
And this happens to do with something you mentioned about finding a project within like your present moment, having an idea about another one, thinking, when do I do this?
Yeah.
When's the right time?
Yeah.
How do you manage that?
I have a spreadsheet, and it's called All the Things, and I have all my ideas in there, and every once in a while I go into it and I do one of them.
Great, thank
and
you.
And that spreadsheet is probably like 10 years old, so.
Sweet.
Maybe not 10. I don't know, it's old.
Thanks.
Life is long. You will do all other things.
I got a question. I'll go over here.
Hey,
Hi.
Alvin.
Yeah.
That's my friend.
My name's Alvin. I'm embarrassed because I hit you with a platitude and I said, what did I say? Everything happens for a reason. And
Did you say that to me?
I did, yeah.
What?
We were out to lunch and you're like immediately you're like, no, shitty things just happen. I was like, oh, okay. All right. So you were just ready for
If
that.
it makes you feel any better, I forgot.
Okay. Yeah. So then I was thinking about intentionality, right? And even though in that platitude that I used, you were intentional in being like, no, just remember that these things happen.
Yeah.
But what I want to talk about specifically in your presentation, and what was great was I want to talk about did you know that you wanted to film certain things that you did like years ago? I saw a lot of time lapses. It takes a lot of intentionality to say, let's make sure we set up this camera, make sure we film these things. And also at the same time with your father's items and making sure that you kept on to those things. Is that always in your life to say, let me make sure I hold on to these certain things? Or was there something in you thinking, let me make sure that I be intentional, make sure I hold on to these things, have a place for them, and document as you go along?
Yeah. I think it's two different answers. So for design stuff, I just am in the habit of documenting it for a portfolio. And I take time lapses of everything, clearly. But for my dad's things, it was a way for me to be able to let go. My friend Nicole Moriarty is a photographer, and she, it's just so happened, we went to school together at the Art Institute, and then she moved to South Carolina. So when my sister and I would go to Charlotte, Nicole would drive up to help us clean our dad's house. And one of the things she told me was that it's really important to photograph items, because you don't know, like when you're in the moment, when you're grieving, if you're going to regret getting rid of something, but if you have a photo of it, you can keep it. And so I've been documenting. I really initially started documenting my dad's things just in case I ever got rid of anything, I would still have a way to keep it.
Hi. I'm really nervous, sorry. I'm Amanda.
Me too.
I know. Thank you. Thank you for getting up there today. I actually moved to the Midwest in the same time you did when I was 13. Mm-hmm. Great year.
It wasn't my choice. I was a kid.
Mine either. I know. Yeah, long station car ride. I'm curious though, because it's sort of, your presentation is sort of wrapped around the losses that you've had in your life. But the actual theme of being lost and being a creative, I'm just curious about your ideas of just identity in general and how that move affected you. Is there grief beyond the loss of people that we sometimes don't think about or talk about in terms of disconnection? And
Yeah,
dislocation?
I did have that grief. Like Melanie in 8th grade had that grief. But in my 20s, I reconnected with that side of my family. And I recently wrote in my journal to myself, I used to wonder what I would be like if I would have stayed in Charlotte. And now that I know my dad's side of the family, I know I would be the exact same person. So I'm just like them. It's so fun. Like the first time I Skyped with my cousin Mallory, we're like, okay, we're twins. Okay. So, yeah. But I did absolutely have that struggle when I was younger.
Hi.
Hi.
Hi, I'm Emily. I've been going through some grief this week, so this was really poignant.
Oh, I'm going to give you a hug. Come here.
So first of all, thank you for saying not everything happens for a reason, and some things just suck.
Yeah.
Because they do.
They do.
So, and I'm going to be one of those annoying people who doesn't ask a question, but just says something, and I wanted to, somebody asked how you prepare for grief, and so I'll just say, like, I've been going through something really hard this week, and the thing that helped me was people in my life that reached out to me, and so I think the way you prepare for grief is being there for people who are grieving.
Yeah. Oh, yeah.
And I mean, it's not just karma, you know, it's just being there for each other in our lives. And for those that you know very well and those that you don't know very well, just being there for the people in your life that you know are going through hard things. And there's that phrase, be kind, for everyone you know is fighting a harder battle.
Yeah.
So I think the more that we do that in our lives, the better prepared we are when things are hard in our own life. So thank you so much for being really honest, and I really appreciate it.
Thank you for coming out.
Hi.
Hi.
My name's Peg, and this is my first time here. I'm so glad that you're bringing up this topic. My mom died when I was pregnant with my daughter,
I'm so sorry.
and it was really difficult to both attach to my daughter and also let go of my mom.
Yeah.
But the fact that I can even talk about it, especially in front of a large group of people, mainly who I don't know, it shows that I have done some of the grief work anyway.
Yeah.
But what I wanted to ask you was, I'm from the Midwest. I was raised Protestant. Those are some of the identities that I have. Have you noticed differences in grieving, in the Midwest versus where you were raised? And I kind of feel like maybe in the Midwest, especially as a Protestant Midwesterner, we're not very good at it.
Hey, she said it.
Yeah.
There's absolutely cultural differences, and like the example I always say is like you go to a Lutheran church and everybody like sits still and is quiet and pays attention, and then in a black church it's a dance party. So yeah, that's actually been something that I've struggled with, and people looking at me through that lens and not understanding that it's just a cultural difference and that I'm grieving differently because I am culturally different. And as serendipity would have it, I had a slide about that and I didn't know how to like fit it in. So thank you for asking that question.
We met before and arranged that. Just kidding.
Yeah.
Thank you.
Yeah.
So one of the things that I found with grief is remembering people who have died with the Creative Project.
Yeah.
So I want to give you a book that I wrote to help children with the fear of death. And I also want to demonstrate what I have found helps people if they're okay with hugging.
I'm okay with hugging. Yeah.
Thank you. So everybody's used to hugging like this. And you do that. But then you go to the other side where the hearts touch. And if you hug long enough, you can start to rock them. Human touch. And I know some people aren't comfortable with hugging, so then I just kind of hold their hand and concentrate on your heart. And you don't have to say any words. Just pass the energy of love from your heart to their heart.
Oh, I love that.
So you spoke about, as part of your grieving process, having that creative outlet. And I have found that since some recent bad things that have happened and a lot of grieving that's happened, feel like I've been knocked off center and just feeling very lost, both in my creative process and otherwise. And so I don't know if you have any thoughts on like when it's hard to even start that creative process or start that healing in that way. Any thoughts on how to kind of recenter?
Yeah, no, I totally understand that. I think when I feel like that, it's really important to me to just make things for myself, like self-initiated projects, without the intent of it turning into anything. Like, just my journal is basically a sketchbook. So I just recently heard a quote: "You make art to figure out what's going on in your head." And so start with your journal, because there's something like blocking you. But you can draw it and write it down and you'll feel better. Yeah.
I have something just real quick. What comforts me is every time I think of someone, they're visiting me. So that just kind of helps, get you through that grief.
Oh, I love that. Thank you.
So,
can you say it again? They didn't hear you. Can you say it one more time? They didn't hear.
Okay, take two. What comforts me is every time I think of that person, they're visiting me. So when you think of it, they're there. They're there with you.
So, thank you. This is my first time, and it was the topic that brought me, because going through the same thing the last few years have been pretty difficult. Yeah. Thank you for the no platitudes.
Yeah.
The priest at my son's funeral said, some people shouldn't speak. Because their platitudes are more hurtful than helping. So thank you for that. Yeah. I produce an art direct PowerPoint. Your presentation was kick ass.
Hey, thanks.
Hi. My dad passed away last year in July, and I still have some of the cell phone messages from him on my voicemail remaining on my phone. So I guess my question is, do you feel like this process has made it easier for you to get rid of some of the things by documenting? You can actually let go of some of the things that you're not as attached to them?
Yes, but I also think that life is long, and if you're not ready to delete voicemails, that's fine. It's only been a year. You're still sad, and that makes sense because what happened is sad.
Yeah, thank you.
Are we done? Okay.